Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of the Set Perspective webinar. Today, we would be discussing misaligned timelines, missed opportunities, and situating environmental assessment within the project lifecycle. So we would have on our panel, we have Engineer Mrs. Jane Naki Tete, who is an environmental specialist with the Associated Consultants. We have Dr. John Bernard Cranton York, the managing director of Vision Consults Limited, and we have Kojo Amoya Osei, a senior consultant with SET. So I would start with a brief background of SET and what SET does. So SET is an environmental consulting firm that has been operating for over 20 years, predominantly within Ghana and also West Africa. Our core area of expertise is environmental and social assessment, management, public health, and occupational health and safety, monitoring, evaluation, and learning, as well as ESG. With today's panel discussion, by the end of our webinar, the participants should be able to understand the importance of aligning environmental and social assessments with the project design and decision-making timelines, identify the consequences of conducting environmental assessments too early or too late in the life cycle, and exploring strategies to ensure environmental assessments remains relevant, credible, and influential for sustainable project outcomes. Then we also have an objective to learn from regulators, consultants, and project developers about the best practice in timing and integration. And the final one is appreciating how improved timelines can strengthen compliance, financing, and stakeholder acceptance. I would give a brief introduction to our panelists who we have on. So I would start with Dr. John Bernard Cranton York, who is a seasoned civil engineer with over 35 years of experience in transport infrastructure development, specializing in highway engineering, project management, and strategic planning. He holds a PhD and an MSc from the University of Birmingham, UK, and a BSc from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana, along with multiple international certificates in budgeting, procurement, and risk management. Hello, Doc. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining us for this webinar.
Thank you, Kwashi.
Yes. And we have Kojo Amoya Osei, who is a seasoned environmental and safeguard specialist with over a decade of experience delivering environmental and social assessments, ESG advisory, and sustainability services across diverse sectors, including energy, mining, infrastructure, agriculture, and manufacturing. Kojo has supported over 40 companies in securing environmental permits in Ghana and embedded ESG considerations into early-stage project planning, ensuring alignment with national regulation and international best practices. His expertise has enabled over 25 clients to access development finance and over 40 companies in developing environmental and social management plans to effectively manage the risk and impact, as well as supporting organizations in reporting on their environmental and social performance. Kojo is a fellow of the Institute of Sustainability Professionals, Ghana, the secretary of IIA Ghana, that's International Association of Impact Assessment, the Ghana chapter, and an active member of several professional bodies, including the Africa Circular Economy Network and the Ghana Institute of Environment and Safety Professionals. We also have Engineer Naki Tete, with over 2 decades of experience in engineering consultancy. She has led numerous environmental and social assessments for major infrastructure projects across Ghana, supporting initiatives funded by the World Bank, African Development Bank, the Agency France, the AFD, sorry, and the Oil Infrastructure Fund. Her work spans key sectors including transport, water and sanitation, energy, and building infrastructure. She is a senior member of the Ghana Institute of Engineer, a fellow of the Institute of Safety and Environmental Professionals, a member of the International Association of Impact Assessment, and currently serving as the Vice President for Finance and Administration and board member at Associated Consultants Limited. She combines technical expertise with strategic leadership, and as currently she is the president of Women Engineering in Ghana, and she continues to champion mentorship, inclusion, and advancement in women in engineering. So my name is Kwabna Kwachimanfi. I would be the moderator for today's panel discussion.
Thank you, Governor.
So we'll just walk through yes. So we'll just go to the guide for the discussion, the housekeeping rules for the discussion. This is to ensure a smooth production session. So kindly take note of the following. So for participants, we have the question and answer function at the base of your screens or your phones, where you can put in your questions, and during the question and answer session, we would respond to them, and the ones that we can provide responses within the chat session, we would do that. So I, the moderator, would be monitoring, and the panelists as well. So during the question and answer session, the participants who did not put their questions in the chat section would also have the opportunity to speak, to ask the panelists your questions for them to respond to. So kindly be patient for us to get to the question and answer session of our webinar. And you would also have to raise your hand whenever you would want to ask a question, so I call you to ask the question. Thank you. And please take note that this webinar is being recorded for records as well. Thank you very much. And you can connect with SET on our socials. That's our LinkedIn at SET Ghana, to know more about what SET does. So the structure of the webinar, we are going to have the panel discussion, which is going to take about 55 minutes, where we discuss various issues with our panelists, covering 5 key areas, where we set the stage, which our focus is to establish the foundation of what project lifecycle, environmental assessment, and engineering processes look like and how they interact. Then we would move on to the integration in practice and cause of poor timing. Here we will be exploring the realities and challenges of aligning project design and environmental assessments and planning. Then we move on to missed opportunities, where we highlight real-world impacts of poor timing. Then we identify the ideal timing and benefits, where we establish consensus on when environmental assessment should occur, the project life cycle, within the project life cycle, and the value it offers. Then we would conclude by strengthening the practice in Ghana and Africa, where we would panelists to give us an insights on the way forward and how to ensure sustainable development through situating environmental and social assessments right within the project's life cycle. So major projects in Ghana and Africa treat environmental assessments as a regulatory hurdle. I usually we see it as just a tick box where we do it to ensure we get the environmental permits for rather than the planning, it's being a planning tool to inform the project's design or the project's outcome. And this often leads to the assessments being done too early, that is before sufficient design details even exist, or too late after major project decisions have been made. This results in missed opportunities for improved sustainability, efficiency, and compliance. So, beginning the discussion, I would start off with Dr. John Bernard Hanson York to walk us through what are the typical stages in the project life cycle and the key activities at each stage.
So, Kwaji, thank you very much. And I think this forum, you should do well to sustain it. And the reason why I'm saying this is that looking at our background, for example, as an engineer, based on my training, all that I want to see is that the road is there, irrespective of how it impacts on those living along the corridor. If I put the road there, I get my satisfaction. But when when I was at various stages in my profession, I realized that engineering is not the final solution. At the end of the day, you are doing it for people to use it. So for a typical project, which has a beginning and which has an end, it will start from the pre-feasibility stage, whereby maybe the donor, in this case, would require that he would like to get some report on where he's going to invest his money, and then he will also look at his policy. So at the pre-feasibility stage, it's very, very high level. You do most of the work by reviewing literature, minimum site visits, and then it's more of a desktop study to be able to assess the impact of some candidate routes that you would be able to bring them to the detailed technical feasibility stage. So at this level, what you do is that most of the work is based on multi-criteria analysis, whereby you look at each road, candidate route, and looked at the economic, the traffic, the socioeconomic activities that are going on at that corridor, its location with respect to the political administration. You looked at the road as it impacts on the life of the people and how it also supports business. So at that stage, you do that high level assessment, and then you may be able to have about 3 or 4 roads out of the roads within that catchment area. And then you come and do the detailed feasibility studies. The detailed feasibility study will look at various aspects of the project, and then looked at economic, socioeconomic impact, environmental impact. I would say that if we are doing things rightly, wherever at each stage of the project development, the role of the environmental experts, and for that matter, the social expert, they should work very closely with the engineers because they bring on board the human face to this project. Because if you leave it with the engineers alone, we will do our calculations and make sure that this is where the road is passing without any recourse to how the alignment impacts on the people. So at the detailed feasibility stage, we need the environmental people to also work closely because in the final analysis, we need to have some optional analysis at the feasibility stage and be able to use the environmental and social impact assessment as also an input in selecting an alignment that would serve the people well without compromising on their socio-economic and the livelihood of the people. Or even if it will impact on these people, it has to have minimal impact. So the role of the environmental and social impact assessment is very key. And that information that is gathered and then the mitigation thereof that is stated in this has to be taken seriously. Well, in terms of the legal framework, you need to use that document as something, what you need as a requirement to be able to get an environmental permit. But what I would say is that that environmental and social impact at the full feasibility stage, it helps a lot for us to know the mitigations in terms the road is going to impact negatively on those who will be influenced by the project. I mean, those within the influence area of the project. That has to be done properly. And one thing I've also realized is that after that, when the feasibility study is done, budgets are established, the clients, in this case, could be the Ghana government or a donor agency. With respect to the donor agencies, at the feasibility stage, when a typical option is selected, they would make sure that you have all the environmental considerations that has to inform the choice of a typical option. That is something that they do very well and they do it religiously. But what I have realized when it gets to that stage and it's Ghana government, at times we don't do things the way the donors have been doing, taking this environmental and social impact assessment seriously. In their case, if they read the report and they realize that the impact could be negative, they may come in to help you address or make sure that there are conditionalities that the mitigation measures are implemented during the project execution stage. And it is this issue after the feasibility studies and selecting the given alignment is what informed the detailed engineering design. I mean, the detailed engineering studies and design is informed by the choice that you make at the full feasibility stage. Now, when you are doing the designs, one thing I've come to realize is that at the design stage, that is where there is some disconnect between those who are doing the design and what has been done at the feasibility stage, which should also inform the design process. So at this stage, you realize that the engineers are doing things as if there's nothing like environmental impact assessment to be considered, and then make sure that those designs are informed by the mitigation measures that has to be implemented. So at that stage, you do the designs, and then you come out with a very nice design, and you realize that the environmental impact issues and its mitigation they become orphans, as if they are not needed at this stage. And it's a mindset of the engineers, which has to be addressed. It's an issue that has to be addressed. And therefore, that's why I'm saying this forum is very good, so that they would be able to be in tune, because at that stage, they call the shots. And if the person is not well, is not well versed in this issue, he will not give it any consideration. And also, after the design, and then we go to procurement, we select the contractor who is supposed to build the most of, at that stage, a lot of the clients don't ensure that the tender documents do also come with the ESIA report. You know, but before then, the bills of quantities will evolve out of the detailed design. So at that stage, if the mitigation measures are not considered at the design stage, when they are preparing the BOQs that would be used for tender, you realize that the mitigation measures that has to be implemented are there all right, but there's no cost under the BOQ to implement these mitigation measures to sustain the environment. So they'll go to tender and then come out, and then later when they start executing the project, then they'll realize that, oh, there are environmental and social mitigation measures that has to be addressed. But at that stage, there's no money. And now you have to go and look for money, and at times it's tedious. And so they just gloss over it. And then they go ahead to do the project. And then you realize that at the end of the project, these issues have become challenges to those living along the corridor and the road users themselves. So in a nutshell, this is what I'll say.
Thank you very much, Doc. So from Doc's explanation, the stages we have within the project's life cycle, we started with a pre-feasibility study where the preliminary studies are conducted, then you move to the feasibility. Then you also do your detailed project design, then you move to your procurement and construction activities. Doc has really given us an elaborate explanation on this. But Doc, I would also want to find out, do all projects actually go through these stages? Do all projects have pre-feasibility studies done, feasibility, or some just move straight to the design? So you can do this for us in 1 minute.
Okay, so not all the projects, at times, depending on the scope of the project, if it's a new construction, then maybe if the donor, I'll say that if the donor is not Ghana government, then he will ask you to go through the full hog from pre-feasibility till the time the project is under construction and is completed. But in some instances, depending on the scope, if it's reconstruction of the project, at times the pre-feasibility is not tackled. And then maybe the donor will require feasibility, detailed engineering design, and then construction. But it depends mainly on the sponsor of the project, based on that institution's policy and the kind of deliverables that will enable them to be able to, for you to meet the conditions precedent for them to, before they give the funding, they would request that these things are done. So for the multilaterals and the bilateral, especially the multilaterals, they're like African Development Bank, World Bank, European Union. they may require that you go through the full hog but other bilaterals are not very, very interested in some because they have come with a mindset. They've done their own studies already, and they said, this is the road we want to fund, because this road, the funding that is available would meet the policy that will allow us to, it is this road. And therefore, that opportunity is missed to be able to do these things. But for the Ghana government project, at times, the first two stages in terms of the pre-feasibility and the detailed feasibility are somehow played down, because in our environment, at times, the political will or the political dimension also have a very serious impact in terms of when they want the project to be completed and the time that they want it to be done, looking at the space they have in terms to be able to deliver their mandate and then go for re-election. So these things have impact on why some of them will not allow you to do certain things. And then in some instances, like the multilateral, they will allow you to go through the full hog because they are not controlled by any, they transcend beyond political regimes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. We would move to Kojo, who could you kindly outline the stages in the environmental and social assessments process, mainly in Ghana for projects and the purpose of each stage? I think you should do this in about 3 minutes for me.
Okay, Kwashi. I'll try and make this quick so that our audiences can understand. For those who are not in the space, they can appreciate what this whole thing about environmental and social assessment is. So in Ghana, environmental and social assessment is basically guided by the Environmental Protection Act 2025, very recent Act 1124. And then the Environmental Assessment Regulations 2025 as well, LI 2504. And the process is basically designed to ensure that environmental and social considerations are integrated into project planning and decision making. So keep that in mind, project planning and decision making. Now, the general steps that we have, basically screening. So that's the first step, screening. And this is to determine whether a proposed project actually requires environmental assessment. So there are different levels of assessment, some more detailed than others. And the nature of the project, where the project is being situated, all that determines, and a few other factors, determine this screening and whether a detailed assessment is needed or not. Then the next phase is the scoping phase. And in this phase, we want to identify what are the material issues. So basically, environmental and social issues that need to be addressed by the environmental and social impact assessment. So this phase, this scoping phase, basically determines that, and then it outlines terms of reference for the actual assessment. Then the next phase is the actual assessment, which is basically a systematic process in identifying, predicting, and evaluating what are the potential environmental and social impacts of a proposed project or operation, and then coming up with mitigation and enhancement measures. Then finally, we have the review of the assessment, which is basically done by the Environmental Protection Authority. And so they take this environmental and social impact assessment that has been done by the consultants, the assessment that has been done by the consultant, and then they review it, provide some comments, and then they issue the environmental permit, which comes with permit conditions. And these permit conditions are basically the mitigation measures that have been put into the assessment to address any environmental and social risk or impact. And these permit conditions are basically binding on the developer of the project. Yeah, so I think for the purpose of this discussion, I can leave it here. So Kwachi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kojo, for that. And I would also want to find out that from your experience, when do proponents usually commission environmental and social assessments?
Okay. So typically, do you want the good or do you want the bad?
Any is fine.
Okay. So from experience,
But the
I would
most
say
predominant one.
yes. So from experience, most projects in Ghana that we've been a part of would say they are commissioned too late in the project life cycle. So what too late basically means is that the design has been completed and approved and signed off. This is the design. And then they remember that, oh, there's a permit called environmental permit that we need. So let's go and get a consultant to do it for us. And then they come to us and say, oh, we have a project, it's going to be done here. This is the design. A lot of the work has already been done. So you know what? Just do a quick EIA for us. We need to just submit it to EPA and then we can go our way. And like I said, at this stage, the project design is often already fixed. So it's leaving no room for any meaningful integration of environmental or social conditions. So like Doc shared, if the engineers don't have, let's say, an environmental person on the team, it is likely that there isn't going to be any consideration for any environmental or social issues within the whole design. Or even if there is, it may be very, very basic. Sometimes the assessment also becomes just a regulatory formality, like I've said, rather than using it as a planning tool that it is to improve the design quality, to reduce risks, or to enhance sustainability. And the opportunities for redesign of the project layout are lost. Maybe even opportunities to choose a better site are lost. Opportunities to adapt alternative technology are also lost. And all these will be coming from a sustainability point of view, but they are all lost because the decisions that went into choosing the final design were more of technical in the engineering sense. So the EIA ends up being more of a reactive document. And when I say reactive, what I mean is that it is trying to justify the existing decisions that have been made. Because here's the challenge. The EIA that is submitted to EPA is going to come with permit conditions. So if we say something that is different from what the design has said, then the permit conditions will be very, very different from what the proponent is actually going to implement. Then that becomes an issue for the proponent because when the Environmental Protection Authority comes for their monitoring, they're going to come holding those permit conditions. And then you are not going to be able to meet those permit conditions. So now that the consultants are thrown in a fix because we are forced to let the EIA align with the design rather than letting the EIA inform what the final design is. Okay. Thank you, Kwachi. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kojo. I think you have spoken too much about the engineer, so Engineer Naki has to respond to that. So, Engineer Naki, we want to understand from the engineering perspective where you are mainly engaged in the design as well as the construction. how you integrate environmental and social considerations or the environmental and social assessments in your activities.
Thank you very much. So as my senior engineer has already outlined how project processes are, and then Kojo has also set up the process for EIA, I would say that the engineering bit of the project is just translating the design into reality, to real world infrastructure. Ideally, the environmental assessment is supposed to help the design choices, because as he stated earlier on, when you're at the conceptual design stage or at the preliminary design stages, you have options. You are designing options, and your options have so many things to it. And EIH, the lack of better, the preliminary environmental assessment is supposed to help with the choice that they will make at the end of the day. So it's a decision-making tool, and it should be seen as such. But unfortunately, anyway, over the years, engineering team are beginning to understand the environmental assessment as a tool for choosing alternatives that has been designed. Because they had that mentality, as Engineer Cranton York has already said, that, an engineer wants to see a house built, a road done, according to engineering specifications. That is it for him or her. But then with, awareness over the period of time, we have been able to, some people have come to acceptance that EIA or ESIA is also a tool to use for choosing design options. So ideally, assessment should run just when the conception of the idea starts. At the conceptual stages, that's when we are defining the project scope, function, or where we are citing it and all that, an assessment has to start from that place. In that way, you give room for integrating whatever findings that comes in. Unfortunately for us, in this part of our world, it's a bit difficult integrating these two teams. So it's like most environmental consultants are kind of working in isolation, whilst the engineering team are also working in isolation, and there's no interaction sometimes. I am fortunate to work within engineering, so I get to be in team meetings and be able to influence whatever findings that has come in. But most people work in isolation, and probably you would just send an email or to say this and that, and what the engineering team will respond in, whether they accept it or not. They don't have that kind of interaction. It's unfortunate that this happens. But I can say that over the years, engineering team are beginning to see ESIA as an assessment to help them select alternatives rather than just taking the box. And I agree with the sentiments raised by the two previous speakers, where we look at EIA as regulatory something. Let's just do it and go ahead and get a permit. And it'd be surprising that proponents of projects actually would say, so they am a EIA for EPA, so let's do it fast and move on. When you are trying to explain to them the reason why they need to look at it critically, because it affects the bottom line of the project. Anyway, anyhow, you might think that you are just doing it to satisfy your municipal assembly or satisfy environmental protection law just to tick a box, but then it actually affects the project cost. And so looking at it very well helps reduce some of the things that would have increased the cost of projects. So I think by and large, we are beginning to understand that we just don't need it to tick a box, but we need it to help us be able to make choices with all the alternatives that are in, be able to suitability of the project, whether the soil is stable, whether the drainage pattern is okay, it's going to be affected or not, whether biodiversity is going to be affected, whether that area we are citing, the thing is sensitive, or the proximity to community and all that. So it helps with giving proper engineering solutions to problem. And I'm happy to say that the few people I've worked with are beginning to understand that it rather helps them choosing a better solution for a problem than just satisfying regulatory requirements. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Naki. Doc, I would direct this question to you. So I think from your submission and also that of Engineer Naki, I realized that what leads to the poor timing may be one, the proponent's commitment to sustainability or environmental integration into their projects, then also the disconnect between the engineers and the what do we call it, the environmental professionals. Then we also have the donor, the funding, the source of funding being a key factor on when environmental and social considerations are actually taken into account. So I wanted to find out, are there any other reasons why environmental and social assessment is not done at an early stage within the project life cycle?
Okay, so I think one of the things that the institutional, those agencies and then ministry responsible for infrastructure development, I think if you go to the agency, they don't have a very strong outfit to ensure that right from the outset, these issues pertaining to environmental assessment are part of the process. It's only recently that GHA, Ghana Highway Authority, has now have a unit that is dealing with the environment and road safety. You get me? But if you go to places like urban roads and feeder roads, they may have an officer responsible. So it has not been institutionalized that before you, unlike the donor agencies, where there are outfits that before they clear a project for it to be implemented in terms of even selecting the consultant to do it, they would ensure that all the necessary requirements are part of the terms of reference that is going out to solicit for proposals. It's only recent, as I said, it's GHA that GHA is trying to do something just like the donor agents, but the other road agencies do not have this. So the institutionalization of the environmental and social assessment has to be done. And also, one of the things I've realized is that the EPA may issue a permit. Under the permit, they will state the mitigation issues that have to take place to ensure that there is sustainability. But the EPA themselves, their monitoring role has to be strengthened so that for every project, they will come periodically to ensure that these mitigation measures are being addressed. And also, one of the things we have to also look at is the funding to address the mitigation measures, which are, as we said, when the feasibility is finished, at times, when you are preparing the BOQ, it's strictly based on the designs. And therefore, the issues with how to deal with the mitigations are somehow not attended to. So it's the institutions that has to be strengthened And there should be a policy, even though there's a transport policy which addresses all these things, they are not fully being implemented. And I believe that the Ministry of Roads and Highways and the other infrastructure agencies should ensure that these things are done so that it becomes part of us. Now it is like, as they said, it's like afterthought, or so let's do it for them. It's not something that is ingrained in our project cycle. So these are the issues I believe that has to be addressed. And the fact that we should not make those responsible for the environmental and social issues, we should not put them on the fringes. They should be key stakeholders during the planning stage of the project. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. So we are now at a session where each of our panelists in 2 minutes, please let's do well to stay within the time. So in 2 minutes, give us, I can share an experience where there has been missed timing of the environmental and social assessment and what it's led to. So maybe we'll start with Engineer Naki.
Mistiming. Fortunately for me, most of the projects I've worked on, I've got opportunity to start. Maybe not at the plannings where the agency was sitting at the table to plan the project, but at the stage where feasibility has to be done or preliminary designs have to be done. So I've always got the luxury of starting with the team. I'm not sure whether I've done any project where I come in later on. Yes, but then as I said, sometimes at the beginning of the projects like that, you have your engineering team focused on meeting deadlines without recourse to the environment or the social bit of it. And it's always a struggle to kind of force yourself to fit in, lack of better word again, to fit in because they don't want to accept, they don't see it as something that is going to help them to be informed of which choice or which options that has to go. When I'm on projects where it's funded by the donor agency, quite smooth, they understand that that is the requirement in order to get the funding for the project. And as an engineer, you want to see a reality. You want to see your designs on the ground. So then if that is the only option I have, let me go to whatever she's saying and let me incorporate whatever she's saying into the design and all that. Otherwise, it's quite difficult sometimes when they sit in rooms and say, we are doing a technical meeting, typical technical engineering meeting, and they are not considering the social bit of it, or they are not considering the environmental bit, and you have to drum it in to be accepted. So I'm fortunate to always begin at the beginning of the project, but then in the course of the project, trying to put your views across, trying to let them accept the fact that this and that has to be done in order to mitigate issues that will arise during the project. It's been difficult, but then I would want to hear from the other panel if they start midway and how they also experience their experiences are like.
Thank you very much, Engineer Naki. So, Kojo, can you kindly share your experience?
So my experience with this is we've had, I think I cannot mention the name of the project, but one of the issues with starting too late can be that there hasn't been adequate stakeholder engagement. So usually there's a very big distrust for the project within the community that is hosting that particular project. So in cases like that, when the consultant comes in later, he or she has to do a lot of work to get that social license for the project and be able to convince the community that maybe the proponents just lack that awareness. So that's why they have not engaged them for this long. And then do our best to bring along the community members, like the main actors in the community, who then also bring on board all the others, and then address some of these other disadvantaged groups within the community, so that there is a buy-in for the project by the community members. You realize that sometimes communities agitate about projects not because of any ulterior motives, but I might add that sometimes there might be, but not all the time. There are cases where because people don't have enough information, they assume that something diabolical is going on there, whilst there is no such thing. And all it took was for the environmental process to be initiated early, for these stakeholders to be brought on board and frequently updated on what is transpiring, what's going on. And that is all it would take. But there's also some notion on the part of the developers who think that, I mean, the community members are going to agitate, they're going to ask for money, they are going to ask for unreasonable things. But in our experience, this has usually saved more money, because usually you would realize that the proponents going there thinking they're just going to throw money around and probably win everybody on their side. But it usually doesn't work like that. The community members are smarter than we actually give them credit for. And they would want to know what are the plans, what are the timelines, how does this look for us socially? Are we going to get some jobs to do? Is this going to affect our drinking water? Is this going to affect our youth? Is this going to bring criminals into our community? These are some of the key issues that, if the impact assessment process is started early, can be addressed, so that we don't have any challenges between the proponent and the community down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I have something to add, but it could be a long story. You know, when we were doing the N1, the project was actually packaged into 2 parts. From Tetekwashi to Apenkwa has been acquired by government as far back as 1970. But then when we got to Apenkwa to Malam, we also realized that there had not been any acquisition. And therefore, the donor, that's the Millennium Challenge account, asked us to go through the full process of acquiring that section before they will allow us to use their money to construct the road. So we had to go through the full hog and then prepare the environmental impact and social impact assessment report, and then ask Ghana government to compensate the project affected persons before they will allow us to start even the construction. So we thought from when we were at MEDA, we thought that, okay, when we get there, we can bulldoze our way through, because we've put pillars earmarking the right of way. And then when we got there, they asked us, where is the environmental impact assessment? I said, GHA has put pillars there, so they are not supposed to be there. Then they said, look, we are impacting on their livelihoods, and therefore you cannot let them go empty-handed because you want to construct your road. So government was forced to now get a budget, because the government also needed the road badly, get a budget to be able to compensate the project affected person with respect to resettlement. So that scenario delayed the project because we didn't time it well. And it was something that if we had gone through the real acquisition, we will know that GHA hadn't acquired it, even though they put their pillars there, indicating that there's the right of way of about 90 meters. So if we had done the environmental impact and social impact assessment, we will be able to know the cost, and then Ghana government would have budgeted for it because they don't want you to use their money to pay a project with respect to land, because land issues are Ghana government. So that is one area that we mistimed, but we recovered, and it wasn't easy trying to go through the getting the executive instrument published, and then actually making sure that the PAPs, we said the grievances committee, and it was such a huge issue. And then the stakeholder engagement, those who were affected, it became, in fact, one of the forum, they nearly linked us because we want to make them worse off. So the assurance came, we took there were so many. They made us compensate people, even the hawkers. We were compensating them before we could do the road. And one of the issues that is also leading to not properly addressing, bringing this mistiming, is that at times the man-month input that we put in projects for the expert, environmental and social impact expert, is so small. Maybe a project is for about 3 years, calendar years. They give a man-month input for the environmental expert and the social expert, say 3 months. So you could see when he spends the 3 months, he has nothing to do with issues downstream. And therefore, things can be done without their record unless somebody challenges that, look, you haven't done this. Then they will go around looking for that person and then increase the month to let them be on board. So these are some of the things that are also leading to, and then I believe that the institutions to the road agencies and the engineers who are heading these issues could also be looked at. They could be trained like the way Naki has been trained, because she is basically an engineer, but now wearing the environmental and social, so she understands the issues better. But if you go and put me from top to down, engineering, turning soil, building roads, there, I'll not do that because I'm converted. But somebody who is now starting, they don't seem to understand. So I believe that the training and the exposure of engineers, professionals, should be deepened so that we get the opportunity to understand this issue. One thing I've also realized is that the mistiming is also due to the fact that the experts at times are not vocal in trying to bring these issues forward during such engagements. And when we are addressing those issues, they sit down and say, oh, it's okay, you can do it this way. But they are not that forceful. And therefore, at times their voices are not heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. We are a little behind time. We have just about 6 minutes to end this the discussion and move to the question and answer session. So I think we would move to identifying the ideal timeline where impact assessments or environmental assessment should be properly situated within the project life cycle. So I think with this, Engineer Naki, you have the best case scenario. You've been involved in the best case scenario, so you can take us through this.
So ideally, the best time to start is at the pre-feasibility or the feasibility stage, at the early stage of design. Even at the point of discussion, you can go back a bit at the point of discussion of conceiving the idea that we want to do this project. I think at that point, there should be an environmental and social expert at that table to start the discussion. Then we can do the preliminary assessments. I mean, the due diligence or whatever at that early stage, that's high level stage, to be able to inform the decisions that will be done along the line. And during the preliminary stages with your options, then all the findings can be incorporated into the decisions of the engineers. And then even though you may even have an option at the detailed design stage, assessment can still go on because at that point you still have to do your stakeholder consultations, and some concerns may be raised with the particular options you have, and then you may be able to mitigate it at that design stage. So it's a continuous process throughout the life cycle, and even at the construction stages, sometimes issues come up that were not looked at during the assessment, and as during the construction stage, sometimes designs are revised along the line just to satisfy certain things that come up, which were not seen at the design stages. So whatever comes up, whatever challenge that comes, environmental can also be considered during that stages. I mean, this is from experience that, and a typical experience is Pokwasi interchange, for instance. So at a point in time, certain design has to be amended to be able to mitigate some issues that came up. So along the stages of the entire project to the end, I mean, assessment still goes on, and it has to start at the very table that the idea is
That's
posed.
okay. I said you get back to me.
Yeah. So that's it, Problem.
Thank you very
You
much,
get back to me.
Engineer Naki.
Yeah, I'll come there. I'll come.
So we move to
Boy.
Kojo, who would speak to us on from the various stages that Doc and Engineer Naki have spoken on, speaking on the early integration of environmental and social considerations. What do you think? Okay, let me just mention the stages Doc mentioned. So Engineer Naki included the concept stage. Then, so from the concept to the pre-feasibility to the feasibility to the procurement, and no, from the pre-feasibility to the design and detailed engineering design to procurement and construction. So how do we integrate environmental and social assessments into this process to ensure projects are done sustainably and we have sustainable outcomes?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Kwachi. So, from my experience, I would say that the environmental and social assessment should ideally be initiated at that planning stage. So, before the design is finalized. So, ideally, somewhere in that feasibility stage, because mind you, it is also difficult to initiate the environmental assessment when you don't have enough information to actually do an assessment. Then you may also hire the consultant too early, and he would actually delay in the work because there's actually no information available to assess. And we've also had a few scenarios like that. But at least that is a better scenario than starting after the design is completed. So ideally, I don't want to create a straight jacket because not every project follows all the identified timelines and processes that we are stating. Imagine if just an individual has his money and he wants to embark on a project. Maybe he's not going to sit down and go through all these processes. But the idea is that when you have an initial concept, an initial idea, which provides the basic information that is required for an assessment, the process for an environmental and social impact assessment can be initiated so that there is some assessment that can inform the choice of the design, and those E&S considerations can be factored into the design. And what happens in a situation like that is that you have something called mitigation by design. It means that the design already has a lot of the mitigation measures factored into it. So they don't become an add-on, but they are part and parcel of the design. And like Doc also said, they have been effectively budgeted for. And I also add that what makes this even more critical is that in this, if you do this quite early and you engage all the various stakeholders and actors, what happens is that you can actually engage the EPA on some of these technologies so that they could even point to you what would be the most cost-effective approach. Because sometimes, for example, a lot of people are talking about solar. But sometimes the solar may be extremely expensive. So it may not be the most cost-effective way of dealing with some of the energy issues. If you engage the EPA, you engage a consultant early enough, those conversations could be had. And some of the best case scenarios, because mind you, there are other proponents or other developers who have also implemented projects and incorporated various mitigation measures. And the EPA is aware of all of these ideas. So when they are engaged early, they can also make some input into the design, which would allow for a very cost-effective solution for the proponent. Thank you, Kwachi. Over to you.
Thank you. And from our speakers, we now know that environmental and social assessment should start at the early stages of project planning. So to conclude, I would ask, let me start with Engineer Naki on what steps do you believe are necessary to strengthen the practice of situating environmental assessments properly within the project's life cycle? I think Doc touched on some of them, that's strengthening the institutions such as the Ghana Highway Authority and the rest. But what other points can you add to this?
I think we need a cultural and institutional shift where we stop seeing environmental and social assessment as an external thing to do. We can adopt integrated teams. I mean, when you have a design team from a different, let's say, different company, and an environmental social team from another company, I think there should be the proponents should be able to bring them together as a unit so that through the process they can consult each other and have effective integration of whatever comes out of their findings. Yes, I know that design reviews, especially with some of the agencies, highway and the rest, EIA is also part of that stage where they sit. At least I've been to a couple of them where they sit, and it's also part of the consideration during their design reviews. And so I think all infrastructure agencies should be able to do this thing. It helps in integrating, giving especially the ESA team an idea what the engineering team is doing and how the issues that will arise if they implement whatever options they have and all that. So, I mean, we should be able to have these team design reviews, including these environmental experts. Institutional design EIA alignment. I sometimes find it's like, okay, EPA is going to do a report. Would they understand some of the issues? But of course, Pedro has said they have enough expertise to know what's the changing world is also happening, so that when testing engineering projects come to them, they are able to understand and make proper inputs into the documents for implementation. And as engineer Granton York has already said, the engineers they have to. We do training in school. We train how do you call it? We do environmental, but I think it's glossed over most of the time because, as I said, a typical engineer wants to see a physical structure done whatever he has conceived or designed, he wants it in reality without recourse to any other things. But so we tend to ignore that bit of it. So if during training, I think we need to look at the training of engineers in such a way that they will appreciate, most of us will appreciate EIA. We should be able to interpret EIA findings to help us with the designing of our drawings and construction specifications, yes, as well as even the quantity surveyors will help us with the tender documents and all those things, yeah. So that's what I have now.
Thank you very much, Engineer Naki. Doc would give us the final insights on the way forward, what he thinks the way forward. And before Doc comes in, dear participants, kindly put your questions in the chat section for the Q&A session so I read them out. Or when you want to speak, you can raise your hand to ask questions. So Doc, over to you.
So just to add a little bit, just as you've said, I think all that my colleagues have said is well and good. One of the things, there were times when we have designs where they don't consider the safety aspect of the rules. They just build rules without putting in the safety features. So there was this school of thought of safety auditors of designs. And therefore, if you do the designs, they have to do safety audit. And if you have neglected any safety issues, you bring them on board into the design before you move to the estimation stage. That's the preparation of the bills of quantities. I would also think that we need environmental auditors of designs so that when the designs are completed, we don't move straight into preparing the BOQ, but the environmental expert would have to do an audit of the design and make sure that those mitigation measures that had been outlined at the outset are all addressed at the design stage before it moves to a stage where that they prepare the bills of quantities. And by so doing that, by that strategy, most of the environmental related issues will be addressed. And therefore, it will not be a big issue when it comes to the implementation of these mitigation measures. So I believe that environmental auditors are very, very necessary for our situation. And also, the Ghana government should also look at, our government should look at getting this thing ingrained in us as engineers working within the infrastructure industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Kojo, do you have anything to add? If you do, we have just 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll make it quick then. So what I want to add is that I think the training should be for everyone. Even the environmental and social consultants also need training because we all don't have to work in our silos. As much as the environment and social experts are also working to incorporate these ENS considerations into the design or provide information for decision making, they need to also be aware of some of these nuances from the construction side or the developers side of things so that they are working with that understanding in mind. I would call for a training that actually brings engineers and ESNS professionals together for training, so that within those rooms, we could have those interactions that would allow us to appreciate both sides, both sides, and be able to work towards creating sustainable designs for the use of the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kojo. And thank you very much, all panelists, for this insightful discussion. I think we would move to the question and answer session where participants would ask questions. I think I see Ernest. Ernest, your hand is up, so you can speak to ask your question. Kindly introduce yourself, your name and the institution you work for or the school you are attending as university or academic institution, then your question. Thank you. I'm not hearing Ernest, so I will just move to the questions within the chat, the question and answer session. So someone was asking.
Hello, please, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, I can hear you, Ernest.
Okay, please, good morning. Please, my name is Ernest Agbeku Kwame Jikunu, a third year environmental and safety engineering student at S. And currently, I'm also interning at Environmental Protection Authority, that's the Western Regional Office. And my question is, I want to know how EPA collaborates with the Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Assemblies, that's the MMDAs, when issuing permits. And I'm asking this question because of the recent developments that has to do with the demolition of structures at the Sakumono Ramsar site, which some of the victims, they claim that they have permits. And also, as a young environmental professional, I want to know how I can benefit from the training opportunities of SET, and I would truly appreciate the chance to be mentored by any of our speakers.
Thank you very much for your question, Ernest. I think Kojo, you can respond. EPA is not here to provide the exact way they do it, but maybe Kojo can try and provide a response.
So listening to, is it Ernest, right? Listening to Ernest, what I would say is that yes, that is one of the problems that I think we also have in terms of the institutions not working together. So in Ghana, unfortunately, the Environmental Protection Act and then the LI is seen more as something for the Environmental Protection Authority to use. But our training, at least at SET, has shown us that other institutions have a large role to play in making sure that what the Act and the LI seeks to achieve, we are able to do it. We are in a country where we have an institution that oversees our water bodies. So even though the EPA has some oversight, the Water Resources Commission also has some oversight in that specific jurisdiction when it comes to water. So when it comes to the environmental assessment work and process, they are equally key as much as the EPA. When you come to the mining sector, the same thing. We have the Minerals Commission. So we need to get all the institutions on the same page so that we don't have the situation where the district assembly can provide a permit for a particular construction because they feel that maybe that construction meets all their requirements, but they have not taken into consideration what the Environmental Protection Act may be saying with regards to maybe Ramsar sites or other sensitive areas. So I'll go back to the point of there being training, and the training not just being for maybe the construction or the project development side of things or the consultant side of things, but also the institutions. They need the training as well. So I think maybe the onus lies on maybe SET, associated consultants, Engineer Naki, and Doc. Maybe basically there needs to be some training. So we may be exploring how we could do this in the near future. And I think there was another question around training for young professionals, training and mentoring for young professionals. Yes, I know at SET we have such opportunities. So Ernest, just send us an email and we will connect you with the right people. I know that IIA Ghana also has some things in the pipeline to support young professionals as well. So just look out on social media, and I'm sure in the near future, not too long, you would see something that should be of help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kojo. I think Benjamin, you have your hands up. So after Benjamin, then Theophilus speaks. So Benjamin, you can unmute yourself to speak. Okay, I think we've lost Benjamin, so Theophilus can ask his question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good morning. Could you please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So my question is, how do we get our state agencies to really act or set up and do the job that they need to do? I'm asking this in relation to every project that goes into every part of the country goes to a specific metropolis. So every metropolitan would know whatever new project coming into their area. But here's the case, that most of the time projects do start without no EIA done, nothing, no engagement to the community, and people are being impacted. We see them all the time. As professionals, I'm asking this because I don't think we are just doing this because it pays for our livelihood, but also because we care and we love this profession so much. How do we as professionals get our agencies to really act and ensure that the proper things are being done? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I would let Doc answer this question.
Well, I think it's a collective effort, so that we looked at it from institutional restructuring as well as supporting it with training. If you get the knowledge of the issues, then you can be an advocate of these. But if you lack the knowledge, how do you cause change? So I strongly believe that we are where we are, but going forward, I think the statutory bodies like EPA, because now they are an authority in Ghana, Environmental Protection Authority. So their influence is even bigger. You can't do anything in our environment without getting there. So if they chart the course, all of us will follow. That these are the things that we want you to put in place in terms of institutions. We want to see a program whereby engineers are trained and certified, giving certificate that he's gone through this training. Then the young ones who are coming after us would all have the opportunity to live by it. But currently, I think we need to look at the training and then led by EPA and then helping the institutions handling infrastructural projects to realign themselves to meet the law. Because there are projects in Ghana whereby if you ask people to go and pay compensation, they said it's too huge and therefore they won't pay. By the time you realize, deep in the night, they will go and put a bulldozer there and bulldoze everything. And it's government project, who are you going to report to? So I believe the lawyers too should come in to also have the kind of knowledge that they need so that they can also support the affected persons in such instances. But so the whole thing has to be, we have to sit down carefully and map up, get a roadmap that will bring us all in line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. I'll take this question from the chat session. It's from Salami. And the question is, how can we ensure project sustainability when the proponents to its EPC contractor already have projects designed in place? For example, technology and equipment to be used, which may be technically good, but not totally environmentally friendly. So, Engineer Naki, how would we deal with this?
I believe by the time an EPC contractor is selected, they would have gone through feasibility. They would have done, if it's a brownfield, then they might have probably done due diligence already. And all the issues has come up for them to address. So I don't think that an EPC contractor can just bring a technology to implement when all these things has not been done. Because I know they will select an EPC contractor when they have gone through the feasibility, they have done all those preliminary assessments and all that before the contractor is selected. And even if the contractor is changing the designs or bringing new technology, you know, should I say the EIS that you produce is a living document. So then it has to be updated to fit the new design that has come with it, all these implications on the environment or the social bit of it. So I can't speak to, yes, of course, Ghana, everything is not ideal. So it's possible we gloss over, but this is what it's supposed to be before the EPC contractor is selected. All these processes have been done. Yeah. And even if it comes with the technology, as I said, it's a living document, so it has to be updated to fit the new technology that is being brought. I hope it answers the questions.
Yes, thank you very much. We have 2 minutes to end our webinar. I would take the last two questions. One of them says, how can ESIA consultants help in the aspect of project alternative selection to ensure project environmental and social sustainability? So, Kojo, you can do this for us.
How can we help? I think it's
how can the consultants, environmental and social assessment consultants, help in the aspect of project alternative selection?
Yes, I think project alternatives is a large part of the assessment process. So during the scoping phase of the impact assessment, we identify various alternatives, and these alternatives are then taken through a process by the EPA to then sign them off as part of the terms of reference. And then in the main assessment, all those alternatives are assessed. So it could be site selection alternatives, it could be technology, it could be, for example, if it's a project that has to transport a lot of material, it could be even selection of the route. taking into consideration many various factors. So that is part of the work that the ESIA consultant does. So if this process is initiated early enough, those considerations can make an input into the final decision by the client. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kojo. So the last question, that is, what advice would you give to an upcoming sustainability professionals who are often under pressure and working on government of Ghana funded projects as a social and environment expert? Okay, so that's one of the questions. Then the next question is, as a social and environmental expert, should we simply give in or give up when our professional judgment is constantly challenged or not regarded, since it seems as if this is our current stance? So, Kojo, you can take this for us.
Okay.
Then
So
Engineer Naki would conclude on the last question there, what we should do as environmental and social experts.
So which one do you want me to answer?
So you can take both questions, then Engineer Naki would conclude for us.
Okay. So starting from the second one, okay, so just starting from the one on being a young professional and maybe your professional judgment being overlooked. I think, like Doc said earlier, we need to be able to also speak up at such meetings. And the first step to being able to speak up at such meetings is having your facts. So, for example, there are many cases that have shown why it might be important to do impact assessment at a particular stage and what the consequences are. We have many examples, even in Ghana. So it may be the responsibility of the consultant to equip themselves with this information. Because you see, for example, if you are speaking to a proponent who is a politician, whose government is in power, it is very difficult to convince them that they need to go through the full impact assessment process. Unless you can clearly outline for him some benefits that he's likely to gain from it, or some risks that he's likely to avoid, even reputational risk. So if you're able to outline these things for them, sometimes it goes a long way in helping them to make a decision to listen to your professional judgment and advice, and giving them the real life experience of some of these scenarios. I believe in our experience, we've had many cases where proponents have come to us after they have experienced some challenges. And then after we have done the work, they now come back and say, oh, if I knew that you were there earlier, I would have come to you much sooner and avoided all these challenges. So I think we should not always try to convince people from just the maybe saving the environment point of view or protecting the society point of view, but we can tie it into what benefits, sometimes even cost savings, that the proponent might benefit. And I think if you speak that language, it can convince them.
Okay, thank you very much, Kojo. So, Engineer Naki, the last question was, as environmental and social experts, should we simply give in or give up?
I don't think you should give in. You should and give evidence that, if it's an email, give a trail of what you are saying so that whatever happens, it doesn't come back to you. But don't give up. There are instances recently, I had to step in for a colleague who was on leave on a certain project. And I went to the meeting, the site no, it was a technical meeting, yeah. Then you see the contractor's project manager is downplaying some of the things. And I said, hey, if I'm here at a table with you, you don't downplay ENS issues. You speak to it and you address it. You tell me how you're going to address it. You don't tell me like, oh, say it's environmental, it's not technical. No, you don't play that with me. So be firm, as Engineer Branton has said, we need to speak up. Know your facts. When you know your facts, you are able to boldly assert yourself and make them understand that this is the issues. And if you can back it up with emails or with memos or whatever it is, you have put your issues across to the team or whoever the proponent is, so that you absorb yourself from any consequences that comes after. But then speak up and don't give up. Even if they downplay whatever you're saying, don't give up. That's all I would say.
Thank you very much, Engineer Naki. We have comments from Benjamin. He said, I want to mention there might be a third to the good and bad, could you mention? That is the West. And this is when the project is in the implementation stage without an EIA. That is environmental impact assessment. And in such a case where a project has been commissioned and is ongoing without an EIA, in the case of a private proponent, we have faced such a situation, and how will you handle it? Okay, so that's the question part. And how are you going to conduct an EIA to in a way serve as a baseline for future studies, or an EMP to mitigate the impact identified, or both? So I think, Kojo, you can quickly do this for us because we are behind time, then we end our discussion.
So if I get the question, it's the project has already started.
Yes.
Asking if you should go back to do an EIA or you should just do an EMP.
Yes.
Okay. So ideally, by the law, there needs to be an EIA, which would then inform the design and all the decision making. So unfortunately, if it has not been done and the project has already started, in a way, you still need to satisfy all righteousness. So you may need to still create that EIA, but in reality, it is just a tick box because the project has already started. And the actual tool that would be useful in this stage where the project has already started would be the management plan. So you would still go ahead, if required, if the proponent needs that EIA so that they can get the permit, even though the project has already started. You do the EIA, and then you then do the substantive management plan, which would actually allow you to monitor and manage the ENS issues real time as the project is ongoing.
Thank you very much, Kojo. We are
Can I
within
add a
1
word?
minute. Okay, Doc, yes,
Yes.
you can conclude, then
You
we
see,
close.
like what Mr. Amoyal just said, one of the things I find it worrying is the management plan, the environmental social management plan. That at times we leave it to the contractors to prepare for us to look at based on the ESIA. I strongly believe that some of them, they don't understand how to, so they normally get somebody to prepare it for them, but they will not implement it. So I strongly believe that these the management plans, most of the time, the people who prepare the ESIA have the capacity to, based on the mitigation measures, propose some plans that would be used to manage these things. And if it is possible, we even take it out of the contractor's responsibility and give it to the consultant, so that when we are preparing the BOQs, we would at that stage take it on board and it become part of the project cost, so that when he is pricing, he will price it accordingly. But at times, because they want to be the lowest in terms of pricing, all these things, they will give you the management plan. But because the BOQ is not dealing with the cost for the implementing the plan, they ignore it. And then when you get to site, it becomes a big issue. So I think going forward, we should look at that arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. I think we experience that a lot in Ghana here, especially when it comes to road construction, where
Yes.
dousing of roads are not done as frequent because maybe adequate budget was not provided for.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you, participants. Thank you, panelists, for this fruitful discussion. We've gone 11 minutes past our time. We apologize for that, but would like to say a big thank you to everyone for joining, and we will bring our webinar to a close. But the discussion doesn't end here. We will post some of the outcomes on our socials. We can continue having the discussions there. If you have any further questions, you can put it on our LinkedIn platform. You can send us a message on LinkedIn, or you can send us an email. Just visit our website. You would see our details there to send an email. So thank you very much all for participating in this webinar, and our details are shown there. So our website, which is www.setsghana.com, and on LinkedIn is Center for Environmental Health Research and Training, or SET Ghana. So thank you, and we'll bring this webinar to a close. And we'll meet on our next webinar, which would be in December. So kindly be watching our socials for that, and be ready to register and participate. Thank you all, and thank you, panelists.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kwachi.
Thank you. God bless you.